situation of what's happening right now with Afghanistan certainly, I think, is making people wake up to the fact
of what we have there.
What a mess we've allowed, to happen in this. And it's good to see if the church wasn't praying the way that it should during that election, they're praying hopefully the way they should for the Afghan underground church. Several years ago, I've had a relationship with the underground church in Iran before I did with the underground church in Afghanistan. For over 20 years.
Really?
Both, but for Iran in particular, it's been about 24 years now that I've had a heart and worked with the underground church there. But what had happened is I had this dream, and what turned a lot of my focus into the Afghan church was that I had this dream where I saw the Lord standing over Kabul. And I saw, in where the scripture talks about the iron staff and the iron rod, I saw this iron rod in his hand and him standing over Afghanistan. And I got to say, I haven't even shared this dream publicly in this format yet. I've shared it with friends individually, but I saw him take the staff or the end of that rod, plant it in the soil of Afghanistan, and him say, "This is my nation."
Wow.
My name will be proclaimed in the streets of this city.
Yes,
and when that happened, I immediately woke up and I was like, Lord, this is, and this is what you're speaking. I could hear it. I could feel it in my spirit. I knew it in my heart. And then subsequent things began to communicate. Starting when I came back from Afghanistan on my third trip in 2017. And everybody needs to be aware. I mean, I was arrested 3 different times in Afghanistan.
Really?
In January, yes. I was incarcerated. I was held.
Just this last January?
This last January. Let me explain, Steve. I was being pretty provocative. I was following John Wimber's teaching, faith is spelled RASK. And so, and I teach this to the underground church. I'm like, you cannot go in. And I would have many people offer private security for me. I never travel with private security because I don't want to diminish the level of signs and wonders. I don't want to diminish the prophetic clarity. I also don't want to diminish. And when we step out with a higher level of risk, we will see more signs and wonders. There is a clear voice from the Lord. I'm just telling you, I can't explain how it works, although I do believe it is that place of risk and utter dependency on the voice of the Spirit in that moment. But I went there and I was wearing a Jesus is God t-shirt.
I'm just laughing.
Of bombing on Afghanistan. And
I would probably be going, let's not rock the boat. I'll just wear a black t-shirt and we'll just do what we I love people like you. You're so gutsy.
But we were seeing so many signs and wonders happen. And just go out and say, Jesus, Jesus, even quietly. And people would stop and say, what are you doing? What's happened? They were drunk. The atmosphere there is thirsty for Jesus. It's thirsty. Atmosphere is thirsty. And people would stop and say, what? I feel something. I just walked by. I felt peace. I felt something. What is this that I'm feeling? What? And they didn't even hear what I said, Steve. It was just the atmosphere itself.
Oh, man.
And so something is been brewing. This is why this is happening. Because the church in Afghanistan has been exploding since I went in 2017. Something sparked there, and you understand this in understanding kingdom theology and teaching. You release something into the atmosphere. When signs and wonders happen in that atmosphere, something gets released and something begins to stir and birth and begins to move. As you speak the word of the Lord, as you speak whatever is coming in that moment, as you bring healing, as you bring that manifest presence of God, something is released in that atmosphere. It's activated in that atmosphere, and things begin to change. And so that began to happen. I was only ministering to a group of about 20 Afghan leaders in this little house out just on the outskirts of Kabul. And but out of that sparked something, and many of those leaders have since met with me and said, man, signs and wonders exploded in our house churches after that. Even people that weren't under the teaching, that weren't in a way going, we're not even sure about all this. But as they saw it happen and they saw the boldness of faith, but let me jump back so your viewers are
Oh, to make sure you cover the thing about you being arrested. What did you do?
that's what I was going to do. I got arrested. I was put in a metal shipping container. It was about 17 degrees outside, even colder inside. I only had a thin pair of soccer pants on, a t-shirt, a thin hoodie, and I mean they were going to let the cold do their business. They were going to let the freezing conditions kill me. And I wish I had time to go into the whole story because it was a miraculous thing. A devout Muslim man had watched as I prayed for a young boy, a 17-year-old boy on the street. And it wasn't even actually me. It was one of the guys I was training, one of the guys that we just got out into Pakistan. But the NDS, the secret police in Afghanistan, they had pictures and video of all this because we didn't realize they were monitoring that closely. But he was healed. The boy was healed. You could actually hear the bone pop and go back.
Oh man! Wow.
Walking immediately after. It was incredible what took place and what happened. Well, a guy who actually persecutes Christians was watching this, and he came out. He had a stick in his hand, and they were like, "This guy's going to beat us because he persecutes Christians." But he stood kind of frozen. And I thought maybe the Holy Spirit just froze him in the moment. But it turns out he knew the boy, and he knew that his leg had been broken. Now, let me just say this, Steve, they would have killed me there. But that man came and put up his business, put up his self as collateral for them to let me out to go and sleep at the home under house arrest, which again was a part of saving my life. And so it was God just intervened in that situation. But I've been arrested 3 different times.
How did they let you go then? Why did they let you go? If they thought they had legitimate charges, or how does that work?
We're not totally sure of what all was working behind the scenes. What we did come to the conclusion of, and what the guys there came to the conclusion, let me say it that way, we thought maybe it was because of the U.S. Embassy's involvement finally that stepped in, which, by the way, the person from the U.S. Embassy said you wouldn't have gotten any help under the next administration. You got to realize this happened on January 25th.
They're talking about the Afghanistan administration.
Still operating as Trump's team.
Okay.
They were like under the next administration, they said there's a lot that indicate that they are not going to help Christians in this type of situation. But we're not even quite sure if that's what it was. Honestly, we're not totally sure. We just know it was providential intervention, that made them release me, because they didn't necessarily drop the charges. They just released me, because they had evidence of what I was doing. So to drop a charge is not necessarily, something they're going to do when they have the evidence.
Let me ask this one thing. After you're wearing the shirt that says Jesus is God, I'm just going to use my language, did you get wiser and not stop doing it, or did you go right back to wearing those kind of shirts?
I put it back on right away.
Okay, that's the answer.
First of all, we got to get a new perspective. This is how we fight. Our weapon of war is not withdrawing and hiding. Yes, and I just told the Afghans this. I just had a conversation on Sunday when all this was blowing up. I said, listen, Paul gets let out of a basket over the wall, but then the next time he gets a prophetic word and if you go to Jerusalem, you'll be killed. And yet he still goes. Why? Because it's the word of the Lord. He knows what God is telling him to do. So despite the danger, despite all that, you're following what God says to do, because if he'll intervene, he's not intervening to, don't you do this again. He's intervening to show, I will intervene again for you.
That's a good word.
I will intervene on your behalf again and again and again and again. Let me be your defender. You keep being the voice of me, and you keep standing up and speaking up, and don't shrink back. This is my message to the Afghan church. This is my message.
And have you found, let me ask this, have you found other Christian ministries, there must have been some others over there, who were telling you you're not being wise, you're being too blatant? Okay, you're laughing. Okay, that's a good sign, because now there's yes. In other words, right?
They were telling me you're going to get all of us killed, and so we're going to turn you into the NDS, into the to stop you. Here in the West, they were trying to, against Wonderlust Production, Darren Wilson's production company, because we have footage of me there doing this. They were threatening to sue the production company. Steve, these are Christian organizations. Remember what Jesus said.
In their minds, they're just trying to stay alive so they could do the works of the ministry.
And their justification in it is what you're doing is going to cause us damage, so we need to stop you in order to. And here's the thing: this is the way the enemy works. Is he gets us? He'll if he knows his voice isn't the one we're going to hear, he's going to come through the voice of brothers and sisters. And so the thing of it is we have to recognize which is the voice of God. Because I can hear the voice of God through a hostile, ungodly king many times before through the voice of brothers and sisters.
Shoot,
And he had sent it to the voice of the Spirit and hearing the voice of the Spirit rather than the voice of man. But had it not been for that, now what had happened is Shelby Dahl, who heads up our intercessory team, she had a clear word. She goes, on the 25th at 12 p.m., you're going to be released. And at the 25th, she kept, let me clarify what she said. She said 25 at 12, 25 at 12. And on the 25th at 12, Afghan time, not our time, I was released.
Wow.
So we follow the voice of the Spirit and not what we're hearing in the natural, because the voice I was hearing from the Afghan, police and military was, we're going to kill you. But God said differently.
Well,